It started a few weeks earlier in the small town of Willow Creek, just outside Nashville. Eli Thompson was a man most people overlooked. He lived alone in a wooden farmhouse surrounded by hundreds of acres of golden wheat. He drove a rusty old truck, wore the same denim jacket every day, and preferred talking to his cows more than people. But behind that quiet life, Eli was far from ordinary. He was the last heir of the Thompson family, landowners who had quietly bought acres after acres since the 1950s. When big companies started building factories, malls, and highways, they leased land from him. He didn't brag, he didn't flash wealth, he just reinvested everything. By the time Eli turned 65, his net worth crossed $500 million. But no one knew. Not the townsfolk. Not even his neighbors. They saw only a simple man who shopped at thrift stores and helped at the local church. One morning, Eli drove into town to deliver fresh produce to the Willow Creek diner. As he stepped inside, the chatter died. Sitting in a booth were three men in tailored suits, developers from Sterling Properties, the company building a new luxury resort nearby. "Excuse me," Eli said politely, placing 2 crates of tomatoes by the counter. The men glanced at him with disdain. "Careful, old man," one of them said. "You're dripping mud on our floor." The waitress, Lisa, frowned. "Mr. Thompson's just making his deliveries." "Mr. Thompson?" The tallest man laughed. "He looks like he crawled out of a cornfield." They didn't know this old man owned the land their multi-million-dollar resort stood on. Lisa glared at them. "Show some respect. He's one of the kindest folks in this town." But the man waved her off. "Kindness doesn't pay bills, sweetheart. Success does." Eli simply smiled. "You're right," he said softly. "But you'd be surprised how often kindness ends up richer." He left without another word. Later that evening, as he drove past the resort site, Eli noticed trucks and bulldozers pushing deeper into his property. Something wasn't right. He pulled over, checked the boundary lines, and froze. They'd crossed his fence. They were building on his land. Chapter 2, The Man They Underestimated. The next day, Eli visited Sterling Properties headquarters downtown. The marble floors gleamed, the walls were glass, and the receptionist barely looked up when he entered. "Sir, deliveries go to the service entrance," she said. "I'm not here for deliveries," Eli replied. "I need to speak with Mr. Sterling." The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, ma'am." "Then I'm afraid." Before she could finish, a man in a sharp blue suit appeared, Robert Sterling himself, the CEO. "Who's this?" he asked. "Some farmer," the receptionist whispered. "Claims he needs to talk to you." Robert smirked. "Fine. 2 minutes." Eli explained the boundary violation calmly. He showed documents proving ownership. But Robert barely looked. "I think you're mistaken," Robert said smoothly. "We bought all the necessary land." Eli's eyes didn't waver. "No, sir. You didn't. You built over 10 acres that still belong to me." Robert leaned back, smiling. "Well then, sue us, old man. Let's see who lasts longer, your tractor or my lawyers." Eli nodded slowly, picked up his hat, and said just one line before leaving. "I reckon we'll both find out." Chapter 3, The Courtroom. And that's how we arrived at this moment, the crowded courtroom where everyone expected a poor farmer to lose. The lawyers for Sterling Properties strutted in like peacocks. Their briefcases gleamed. Their ties screamed confidence. The townsfolk who had come to watch whispered among themselves. "That's Eli, right? Poor man's gonna lose everything. He should have taken a small payout instead of fighting those billionaires." But Eli sat there, calm as a still pond. When the judge called the case, Sterling's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, this man's claim is absurd. My client legally purchased all the land in question. Eli stood, holding a worn folder. With all due respect, Your Honor, I've brought proof. The judge motioned for him to continue. Eli opened the folder and placed a thick stack of papers on the desk. These are land deeds dating back 70 years, all in my family's name. I never sold those 10 acres. Here's the county record to prove it. The lawyer scoffed. Your Honor, these documents could be. But the judge interrupted. Mr. Sterling, your client's survey maps, can you show them? The lawyer hesitated. Then, sweating, he opened a file. The room went silent as the judge compared the maps. After several long minutes, the judge spoke. It appears Mr. Thompson is correct. Sterling Properties has indeed built on his land, without legal transfer or compensation. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Robert Sterling's face turned pale. Therefore, the judge continued, Mr. Thompson has the right to demand full compensation, or ownership of all structures built upon his property. Eli took a deep breath. Your Honor, I don't want to destroy anyone's work. I just want honesty. And respect. The judge nodded. You'll have both. Robert, furious, stood. You think this old man's richer than me? He's a nobody. Eli looked straight at him. Maybe so. But even a nobody knows the value of right and wrong. Then, as the courtroom erupted, a reporter who had been filming everything ran up to Eli. Sir, may we know how much your land is worth now? Eli smiled faintly. Depends on who's asking. But last I checked, around $200 million. Cameras flashed. The same people who had mocked him earlier now stared in stunned silence. The old man in muddy boots, the one they'd laughed at, was wealthier than every man in that room combined. Chapter 4, The Lesson. A week later, news of the courtroom case spread across the country. Headlines read, Humble Farmer Outsmarts Greedy Developer. Eli returned to his quiet farm, refusing all interview requests. He didn't care about fame. But one afternoon, a familiar car pulled up at his gate. It was Lisa, the waitress from the diner. I just came to say, you showed them, she said with tears in her eyes. You showed everyone that kindness isn't weakness. Eli smiled. People forget that sometimes. But truth, it doesn't need a fancy suit. It just needs patience. She handed him a pie she'd baked herself. For the richest man in the country, she teased. He laughed softly. No, ma'am. For the richest man in heart, maybe. Money's just paper. Respect, that's the real wealth. They sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the wheat fields. In town, people who once mocked him now spoke his name with pride. Robert Sterling's company issued a public apology and donated to local charities, under Eli's request. And every year after that, Eli hosted a community harvest festival, where no one wore suits, and no one cared about brands. Just laughter, kindness, and the smell of good earth. Epilogue, full circle. Months later, a journalist interviewed Robert Sterling. Do you regret underestimating that man? She asked. Robert sighed. I regret not recognizing greatness when it wore overalls. And back at his farm, Eli smiled as children ran through the golden fields. He whispered, my father once told me, never judge a man by his clothes. Judge him by what grows from his hands and heart. The camera zooms out, the humble farmer standing under the evening sky, wind rustling through the wheat that made him wealthy, but never proud. Movie camera. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the Kindness Chronicles, where we remind the world that true wealth isn't in the wallet, but in the soul.